Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister had a chance yesterday to cancel his plan to quadruple the carbon tax. It's important to understand how much he wants to raise taxes on Canadians. He wants to raise it up to 61 cents a litre. That will raise the cost of heat, gas, but also food, because when you tax the farmers who make the food and the truckers who ship the food, you tax all who buy the food. So will the Prime Minister finally tell us how much will it cost the average family when he quadruples the tax? And will he call an election on the carbon tax in order that Canadians can decide for themselves?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, the agri-food sector is affected probably more than any other sector by climate change. In a year when we saw increased floods and more frequent storms, when we saw soil erosion and sporadic and unpredictable rainfall, when we saw fires that went across this country, devastating rural communities, driving people out of their homes and causing destruction, it's really disappointing that the Conservatives still don't believe in climate change. All of those impacts result from climate change, and a price on pollution is working to reduce our emissions and fight that fight.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Only it's not working. They've missed every emissions target but one in the year that the economy was entirely locked down. This Liberal government ranks 58th out of 63 in the world, and their own Environment Commissioner says they will not meet their emissions targets. Yet they still go ahead with this carbon tax, which has proven not to work. So they want to quadruple the tax, including on farmers who have no other choice than to use traditional hydrocarbons to power their machinery, their barns, and their drying. So once again, how much will the carbon tax cost the average Canadian farmer when the Prime Minister quadruples it?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Conservatives were concerned about the cost of food and the cost of fuel, they would stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine, because it is Russia's illegal war of aggression that is driving up global food prices and global fuel prices. But they are ideologically committed to ignoring climate change and doing anything that they could to possibly fight it, so much so that they throw Ukraine under the bus and vote against the very agreement that the Ukrainian government has asked Canada to support. Mr. Speaker, they need to give their head a shake, and they need to stand with the people who are fighting for freedom around this world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The minister who stood and had a photo taken with a Nazi that helped Russian propaganda all around the world. But the question was about the carbon tax costs on the average Canadian farmer. I have here the power bill from Enbridge for a farm in my riding that is $11,000 in carbon taxes alone. That's today. Now the Prime Minister wants to quadruple the tax on Canadian farmers, which will drive up the cost of production, drive food growth out of this country, and drive prices up for everyday Canadian families. So once again, how much will the average farmer pay in carbon taxes once this Prime Minister implements his plan to quadruple the tax?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what is unbelievable is that for the Leader of the Opposition, who claims to stand for freedom, who claims to stand for democracy, will do everything he can to ideologically oppose fighting climate change, including not standing with Ukrainians who are facing an illegal war of aggression by Russia, Mr. Speaker. That is driving up food and fuel prices around the world. If he truly cared about supporting Canadian families, Canadian farmers, he would support the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, and he wouldn't abandon them in their time of need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Their idea of helping farmers is putting in an $11,000 tax on one farm for 1 month. One farm, 1 month, $11,000. Now, they want to quadruple the tax on Canada's farmers. That will do nothing except for send the food production to more polluting foreign countries and forcing us to burn more diesel to transport it all the way back to Canada. So why don't they bring home food production and axe the tax on farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Mr. Speaker, number one, we have a climate plan, and we will continue to deal with the climate plan. If we do not deal with climate, we increasingly put up the price of food. We have invested in farmers right across this country. We're going to make sure that farmers and ranchers stay on the cutting edge. We deal with climate change, because if we do not deal with climate change, like every country in the world is, we will continue to raise prices in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, they still don't have a plan to fight climate change over there. What they have is a plan to quadruple a tax that has failed to fight climate change, giving Canada the 58th ranking out of 63 countries, missing every target but one in 8 years, and on track to miss their targets in 2030. So stop distracting from the real agenda here, which is to take money away from farmers, from food, and from the necessities of Canadian life. Will they, yes or no, announce their support for the Senate passing common sense Conservative Bill C-234 to take the tax off the farmers who feed us?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know who knows a thing or two about farming and climate change? That's the farmers who work in the breadbasket of the world, Ukrainian farmers. And you know who asks Canadian parliamentarians to vote for the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement? Ukrainian farmers. So did the Ukrainian-Canada Congress. So did President Zelensky himself. Ukrainian farmers are betrayed by this federal government. That's the people who grow. Canadian farmers are betrayed by those conservatives. Apologies for the misstep.